This is the story of the necklace. Me and my family have always been wealthy. We come from old money and we've always lived a most luxurious lifestyle. However, a couple houses down from where I grew up and where I reside today, in the upper echelon of France neighborhood, lives a couple. Now, the wife, Matilda, comes from a family of farmers, so she didn't really have anything to her name when she married her husband, George, who was a lowly ministry clerk. So every day and every night, Matilda would sit at her window in her living room and just wish away her life. Just wish that she could have all of the luxuries that me and my neighbors had. And so seeing this, her husband, George, didn't know what to do. But one day, he came home and he just knew that this was what was going to make his wife happy. This was going to make his wife love him until the end of time. This was going to put an end to her sadness and her wishing away her life that she was rich and wealthy. He came home with a letter, or an invitation, inviting both him and his wife, Matilda, to the neighborhood ball. So just excited about getting to show his wife this, he rushes into his house at the end of the day and just runs up to her and gives her this invitation. And Matilda doesn't know what it is at first, but she reads it and she looks at it, and then all of a sudden, very abruptly, she throws it to the ground and says, "What am I supposed to do with this? Why would you even think that this is something that I would want?" And stunned, her husband kind of just stood there and said, Well, I thought you would be happy. Isn't this what you want, to mingle and have fun with all of the upper class people that we live around? And Matilda says, "Of course this is what I want, but how could you expect me to go to a ball wearing what I wear on a daily basis? What I wear on a daily basis would never compare to anything any of the women in this neighborhood would wear. You want me to look like a fool in front of everybody?" Still stunned, her husband says, "But I think you look beautiful. Why would you ever need any other gown besides the ones you already own?" And not really wanting to see the sweet side of what her husband said, Matilda abruptly turns around and goes running up the stairs, crying. But her husband stops her and says, Wait. How much do you think you would need to go and buy a new gown that you think would be able to compare to all of the other women that we live near?" And Matilda, stunned that her husband would even think about giving her money because he had never done this before, says, "I think 400 francs would suffice." 400 francs? 400 francs was all George had been saving to buy a new gun to be able to summer hunt. He had been saving that money as a treat for himself out of all the hard work he's been doing for the past year. But he gave it to Matilda because he knew how much it would make her happy. So Matilda went with this 400 francs and bought a beautiful blue and gold ball gown. It was the most elegant ball gown, some would say even better than the ball gowns that the women who came from money had on that evening. And so everyone thought everything was going well. Her husband was excited that Matilda was happy, and Matilda was just glowing every day and every night, just looking forward to this ball. However, on the day of the ball, her husband went up to check on his wife and ask her when she would want to leave, or if she was even ready to leave yet. And instead of finding her standing in front of a mirror, almost dressed and ready to walk out the door, he found her in a heap, crying on the floor in her beautiful blue and gold ball gown. And of course, he rushed over and asked her, what's wrong? What could you be crying about? This is a happy day. You're supposed to be happy." And Matilda looks up at George and says, "How could I be happy when I don't have a single piece of jewelry to wear? You want me to go as bare as the day I was born to this ball? I will look like a disgrace in front of all of these other families." And actually kind of getting fed up with all of his wife's excuses for reasons not to go to this ball or not to make it a fun evening, finally says, "Why don't you just go ask our neighbor, Mademoiselle, if you can borrow some jewelry from her? Maybe she'll have some you can borrow, because we don't have the time to go out and buy you any jewelry, and even if we did, we don't have the money to do that because we spent it all on this beautiful ball gown that you are currently crying in." Now, he expected Matilda to lash out at him even more because he had kind of snapped at her. But Matilda looked up at him, wiped the tears off her face, and said, "That's a great idea. I'll go over there right now. So Matilda gets up, walks down the cobbled steps, and walks right next door to her neighbor, Madame Moisel, which is me. Now, when she knocked on the door, I was in the kitchen, already surrounded by all of my jewelry because I was picking out what I wanted to wear for the evening. I had to look my best, too. So when she came in, she asked me, she said, "Is there any way that you could spare jewelry for me to wear for this evening, for I don't have any?" And I said, of course. I had way more than I would ever be able to wear at one time, so of course I would love to share it, as long as she returned it. Now, I don't mind sharing, but I would like it back. And I told her this, and she said, of course, and she became absolutely enamored with this diamond necklace I had. I don't even remember where I got it from, but she fell in love with it and asked if she could borrow it for the evening. And I told her of course she could. Why would I say no? She looked beautiful in it. She was so happy, so I sent her away with that necklace. And that night, she was the happiest she had ever been. Me and her danced the night away into the early morning. We mingled with all of our neighbors. We had the time of our lives, and I still remember how I felt that evening as well. Now, Matilda didn't end up leaving the ball until 4 a.m, as one does when they're having just a great time. But when her and her husband went out to the carriage and drove home, and they were both getting ready for the night and undressing, she took off her beautiful blue and gold ball gown. She reached up to her neck to take the necklace off, but it wasn't there. She frantically patted her chest and her body and thought, no, there is no way I have lost this beautiful necklace that isn't even mine to lose. It has to be here somewhere. But when she couldn't find it, she screamed. And hearing the scream, her husband George rushed up the stairs and said, What is the matter? What happened? And she explained to him, I lost the necklace. I don't know where it is. And so frantically, not knowing what else to do, he runs outside to try to catch the carriage to maybe see if it had fallen off in there, but the carriage and the driver were long gone. And he hadn't gotten his phone number. So he rushes back inside and says to Matilda, surely it's here somewhere. You would have heard it fall, and you would have felt it. And she said, no, it's not here. I lost it. So, the very next day, George and Matilda go to a jeweler and find a very similar diamond necklace to the one I had given her. So they bought it. They didn't know what else to do. She didn't want to possibly explain to me that she lost the necklace I had graciously given to her for the evening. So they bought a very similar looking one. However, the next day when she came to return it to me, I didn't even look. I didn't even look inside the box to see if it was the same necklace because, quite frankly, it had been quite a long time since I had given her this necklace, and I was a little perturbed that she had not returned it sooner. What if I would have needed it before now? But I took the necklace, put it in my collection, and she went on her way. I hadn't heard from her since, or anything. And I hadn't seen her so much that I actually thought her and her husband moved away from the neighborhood. But about 10 years later, coincidentally about a week ago from today, I was in the park walking with my niece, and I saw a woman. I didn't recognize her at all. She, for lack of a better word, just looked old. She had wrinkles all over her face, and her hands were just full of blemishes. They were just cracked and dry, and you could tell that this woman had worked her entire life. And she came up to me and stopped me and my niece, and she said, do you know who I am? And stunned, I said, no, I don't know who you are. And she said, I'm Matilda. Mademoiselle, you don't remember me? And when I looked at her, I did recognize her. It was Matilda, the woman I had lent that necklace to and had so much fun with at that ball that evening. And so I asked her, where have you been for the past 10 years? I haven't heard from you. And she said, me and my husband have been working tirelessly for the past 10 years to pay off the debt for the necklace. And I said, what necklace? And she said, the one that I had given to you was not the one you had given to me. You see, I had lost that one, and so I went to the jeweler and found this one. We had to pay 36,000 francs for this necklace. And I've spent the last 10 years paying off that debt. And I looked at her for a second, stunned, and I said, well, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you tell me? And she said, I figured you would be mad if I just told you that I lost it. And I said, well, I would have, but I would have at least told you that that necklace that you borrowed from me that evening was not worth 36,000 francs. In fact, all of the diamonds in it were fake. That necklace that you borrowed that evening was barely worth 500, let alone 36,000 francs.